kick push like Lupe. Leg kicked out like the mama, that's how I shoot fades. Laced up in the box, now we looking like shoestrings. Fofo on my hip, say that he acting odd though. Sawed off under the seat, call it El Chapo. Hoes all over the place, looking like potholes. He dies, then he dies, now I'm sounding like Drago. Always let them bury themselves, that's how you sense fakes. I always aim straight for the head, that's how you kill snakes. Blood all over the place, told you we didn't play. Arms stretched down on the floor, just like Jesus laid. Grain, villains.
What is good? Now it's been longer than I wanted it to be, but it's gotten that time of year where I'm a whole lot busier than usual, and I'm going to have to refocus on how I do the show. I'm coming up with a plan that way we can stay back on schedule and how we do things around here. But welcome back to another episode of the Inner Heel Turn, the show where we talk about making it through life when your brain wants to book a different show than the one you signed up for. I'm your host, JB, your guy. And if you've been riding with me since part 1 of this 5-part series, I want to say thank you. Seriously. We've been through the wars together just right here, and the fact that you keep coming back means more than you know. It really does. But if you're new, first of all, welcome. You're family now, whether you like it or not. Second of all, you might want to go back and listen to part 1 through 3. Because this is a 5-part series about living with bipolar disorder, and each episode has been a different chapter of the fight. But we'll give a quick recap, a quick breakdown. Part 1, we had the diagnosis. That was the bell ringing. That was the moment you find out that the thing inside your head has a name and is bipolar disorder. And your life is never going to be the same. We talked about the shock, the grief, the anger, the identity crisis. The moment you realize the match is real and the opponent isn't some jobber, it's a main event threat. Part 2, we had the manic episode where we went full sin. We talked about mania, the highs, the delusions, the reckless decisions, the feeling that you're invincible right before you crash through the announce table. That episode was a ride. And if you haven't heard it yet, go back. Personally, I feel like it gets intense. Part 3 was the depression. That was the dark match. We went into the pit, the episode nobody wants to talk about, the weight, the numbness, the fog, the moments where getting out of bed feels like a cage match against gravity itself. It was a heavy episode, but it was a necessary episode. But here we are, part 4. This one is going to be a little different. And I want you to feel that difference right from the jump. Part 1 through 3 were about the fight, the internal battle, you versus your brain. And those episodes were necessary because you have to understand what you're dealing with before you can build a strategy around it. But part 4, this one is about the people. This is the episode about looking around and realizing that you're not in this alone. Or at least you don't have to be. Every war story has characters. People who showed up, people who didn't, people who surprised you, and people who disappointed you. People who said the right thing at the right time, and people who said the wrong thing at the worst time. People who stayed, people who ran, people who didn't understand, but they tried anyway, and people who understood perfectly, and they still chose to leave. Today, we're talking about all of those people. Because here's the truth, and I learned this the hard way, the hard way. Part 4 is about the most important weapon in your arsenal. It's not medication, although that's critical. It's not therapy, although that's essential. Not coping strategies, although those matter. The most important weapon in your arsenal is your team, your corner, your tag team partner. the people who stand with you when your brain turns against you. And I'm going to be real with you right in this episode in ways that might surprise you. I'm going to talk about my wife. I'm going to talk about friends I've lost. I'm going to talk about family dynamics that almost broke me. I'm going to talk about the people who carried me when I couldn't carry myself, and the people I had to let go of because their version of love was actually making me worse. This is the relationship episode, the trust episode, the who's really in your corner episode. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't have anybody, stay with me. Because by the end, I want you to understand that building your corner is possible. It's not easy. It's not quick. But it is possible. And it might be the most important thing you ever do for your mental health. So, before we talk about who should be in your corner, we need to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is this. It's the idea, this deeply held, culturally reinforced, dangerous, stupid idea that you can handle bipolar disorder by yourself. I know what some of you are thinking right now. I can hear it. You're telling me you don't need anybody. You're a lone wolf. You handle your business. You've always been on your own and you're still standing. It's a cool story. I love that for you. It's really inspiring. Now name me one lone wolf in history who didn't eventually need backup. Go ahead. I'll wait. You can't, because they don't exist. Let's run through it. Let's go through a Mount Rushmore of tough guys who didn't need anybody, and since it's been on the theme, professional wrestling, and let's see how that actually played out. We got The Undertaker, the dead man, the most feared figure in wrestling history. The man who literally had a 30-year career built on being the most intimidating solo act in the business. Guess what? Paul Bearer, Kane, the Ministry of Darkness, the American Badass had his writing crew, even The Undertaker. The Undertaker had people in his corner throughout his career because even the Phenom knew you can't do it alone forever. Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know him. The toughest SOB in the history of the business. The man who would stun his own grandmother if she looked at him wrong. You know what Stone Cold had? Jim Ross on commentary telling his story. A backstage crew that believed in him, and in some of the biggest moments of his career, unlikely allies who showed up when he was outnumbered, because even Austin 316 needed a run-in every now and then. Well, let's go into... All right, that didn't hit with something. All right, well, let's spin it a different way. All you Jordan fans, the most competitive, most ruthless, most individually talented basketball player who y'all say ever lived. 5 MVPs, 6-0 in the championship. Guess what? He didn't win a single ring until Scottie Pippen showed up. Not one. Your greatest player in the history of the sport needed a tag team partner. He needed Phil Jackson calling the plays. He needed Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman, Steve Kerr hitting the clutch shot. The myth of Jordan as a solo act is exactly that, a myth. You say he was the best, but the best still needed a team. What about LeBron? 4 championships, 4 different rosters, but always had a crew. D-Wade, Kyrie, AD. He understood that greatness isn't about doing it alone. It's about finding the right people to do it with. Tom Brady. 7 Super Bowls. You know how many he won by himself? 0. He had Belichick. He had Gronk. He had the offensive line that gave him time. A lot of times he had the referees. We'll leave that for some other time. He had a whole organization behind him. Even he understood something that too many of us refuse to accept. You don't win championships solo. So why? Why do we think we're supposed to handle bipolar disorder alone? What makes us think that we, dealing with one of the most complex and challenging mental health conditions on the planet, should be able to just go out with no coaching staff, no training partners, no game plan, no corner? That's not toughness. That stubbornness cosplaying is strength. And I say this with love. I really do. Because I was that guy. I was the lone wolf for years. The dude who thought asking for help meant I was soft. Thought if I just worked harder, pushed through, toughened up, I could beat bipolar disorder with nothing but willpower and a bad attitude. But you know where that got me? It got me on the edge of the bed at 3 a.m, convinced the world would be better without me in it. That's where the lone wolf mentality leads. Not to strength, to isolation. And isolation is where bipolar disorder does its best work. When it's got you alone, separated from the herd, cut off from everyone who gives a damn about you. That's when it goes in for the kill. But I need to address something specific here, and I'm going to talk directly to the men for a minute. Ladies, you can listen too. That applies to everyone, but specifically looking at the guys right now. There is this toxic, poisonous, soul-crushing thing in our culture where men are taught from childhood through adulthood that asking for help means you're weak. That admitting you're struggling means you're less of a man. That showing emotion is soft. That vulnerability is a character flaw. That's the biggest work in the history of the business. This is grade A, prime cut, kayfabe. It's a story that someone made up a long time ago, and we've been selling it like it's real ever since. And it's getting people hurt. It's getting people killed. You want to know what's tough? You want to know what real strength is? Real, actual, legitimate strength? Walking into a therapist's office and saying, I need help. Sitting across from your best friend and saying, I'm not okay. Looking at your partner and saying, I'm scared and I don't know what to do. Calling a crisis line when you're in the dark and you don't know if you want to see the morning. That's tough. That takes more guts than any steel cage match, any last man standing match, any hell in a cell. Because in those matches, the worst that happens is you get hurt. When you open up about your mental health, the worst that happens is you get rejected. And for a lot of us, rejection feels worse than any physical pain. But you do it anyway, because that's what warriors do, right? Warriors don't fight stupid. They fight smart. And fighting smart means having people in your corner. Now, let's talk about the professional corner for a second, because this is non-negotiable. This is the not optional. This is not if you feel like it or when you get around to it. If you have bipolar disorder and you do not have a mental health professional, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a counselor, somebody with credentials and training and experience, if you don't have that person on your team, you are fighting a title match without a game plan. And you will lose. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, but eventually you will lose a fight that you didn't have to lose because you refused to get coaching. Your mental health team is your coaching staff. Your psychiatrist is your head coach. They're managing the overall strategy. They're adjusting the game plan, and they're making sure your medication is working. They're watching the film and making adjustments. Your therapist is your position coach. They're working with you on specific skills, specific situations, specific patterns. They're in the trenches with you, drill by drill, session by session, helping you develop the tools you need to execute when the pressure is on. And just like in sports, not every coach is the right fit. You might need to find a few therapists before you find one that works. You might need a different psychiatrist. That's fine. That's normal. You wouldn't stick with a coach who was running the wrong offense for your skill set, would you? It's the same thing. Find the right people, but find them, because they're not optional. They're essential. I'll say it one more time for the people in the back, the people in the nosebleeds, the people who are half listening while they drive or fold laundry or pretend to work. You cannot fight bipolar disorder alone. You were never supposed to. And the moment you accept that, the moment you stop treating it like it's a solo match and start building your tag team, that's when the match starts turning in your favor. The lone wolf dies, the pack survives. Okay, so you gotta forgive me. I forget exactly how we left off a second ago. Like, if you've been listening to the show, you know how I chop this up throughout the day and then just combine it all together. So, forgot how I need to start the next section off. But we're going to talk about something that nobody warns you about when you get diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And they tell you about the medication, and they tell you about the episodes you're going to have. They also tell you about the mood swings and the triggers and the sleep hygiene, but nobody sits down with you and says, hey, some of the people in your life are not going to be able to handle this, and some of them are going to leave. Nobody tells you that. And it hits different when it happens and you weren't aware of it. Some people in your life, they're just not equipped for this fight. And that's not always their fault. We're not going to blame it on them. But it is reality. And pretending it's not reality doesn't protect you. It delays the pain. When I got diagnosed, when I really started being open about what I was dealing with, I watched my social circle shrink a little bit. Not a lot. Because by the time I was completely accepted and got ready to open up about it, I had who I was going to have in my corner anyway. But there were some that I thought were ride or die, and they turned out to be ride or convenient. Some people were just there for the show and not for the fight. And when the show stopped being entertaining, when it stopped being, oh, Jay's so energetic and fun during the manic highs, and started being a little different, those people evaporated. Poof, gone. Like they were never there. But we could call those people, let's see, cheap heat fans or friends. Now, cheap heat in wrestling is when a wrestler goes out there and gets a reaction from the crowd by doing the easy stuff. You know, going to a city and insulting the local sports team, or mentioning a rival school, or making a joke about the food. It gets a pop, but it's not earned. It's not real. It's surface level engagement that disappears the second the segment is over. And cheap heat friends, they're the same thing. They pop for your entrance music. They're there when you're fun. They're there when you're entertaining. They're there when you're the life of the party. But the second the match gets ugly, the second the blood starts flowing and the bumps get real, they leave before the main event. They're texting during the dark match. They're in the parking lot before the cage even comes down. And I'm not even mad at most of them anymore. I was a little bit for a while. But here's what I've come to understand. Some people are not equipped to deal with mental illness. And it's not because they're bad people. And it's not because they don't care about you. But because they just don't have the tools. They don't have the understanding. They don't have the emotional bandwidth. And when they're confronted with something as intense and unpredictable as bipolar disorder, they freeze. Or they flee. Fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of people choose flight. That doesn't make them villains. It just makes them human. But it also means they can't be in your corner, and you need to know the difference. So how do you tell? How do you separate the real ones from the cheap heat? Let me give you some tales, some signs, some things I've learned from being around it long enough to know who's actually got my back and who's just wearing matching t-shirts. Cheap heat friends change the subject when you bring up mental health. You try to tell them about a hard week and suddenly they want to talk about the game last night. You try to open up about a medication change and they start scrolling their phone. They don't do it maliciously. They do it because they're uncomfortable. But uncomfortable or not, that's not somebody who can hold space for you. Cheap heat friends give you bumper sticker advice. Have you tried yoga? Just think positive. You know what? Maybe you should get more sunlight. Have you tried not being depressed? And that last one, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I've heard it. Actual words from an actual human being. Have you just tried not being depressed? Like, yeah, bro. Let me just turn off the clinical neurological condition that alerts my brain chemistry. Why didn't I just think of that? Thanks. You're a genius. I'm cured. Cheap heat friends treat you differently after the diagnosis. And this one is subtle, so pay attention. They start walking on eggshells around you. They stop inviting you to things because they don't want to trigger you. They treat you like you're fragile, like you're going to shatter if they talk to you like a normal human being. And I know they think they're helping, but what they're actually doing is they're not. They're putting you in a category, and once you're in that category, you're not their friend anymore. You're their project, or worse, their cautionary tale. Cheap heat friends disappear during the low points and reappear during the high points. They text you when you're posting fun stuff on social media. They want to hang out when you're up and energetic. But when you go dark, when you pull back, when you stop answering, when the posts stop and the silence starts, they don't check in. They don't knock on the door. They just wait for the next manic episode so the fun friend comes back. But let me tell you about the real ones. The real ones don't flinch when you tell them the truth. You say, I have bipolar disorder, and they don't gasp. They don't look at you sideways. They don't change their body language. They just absorb it. And then they say something like, okay, but tell me what I need to know. Or, what does that mean for you? Or even just, all right, I'm here. The real ones educate themselves. They Google it. They read articles. They ask their own questions. Not to diagnose you, not to become your armchair psychiatrist, but because they care enough to understand what you're going through. Some people, you tell about it, they'll go read 3 books about bipolar disorder after you tell them about your diagnosis. Without you even asking, actually, without you even knowing. They'll just show up one day and say, hey, I read this thing about mixed episodes and I wanted to make sure I understand it right. Whatever, if you have someone like that, that's a real one. The real ones don't try to fix you. This is huge. The real ones understand that they are not your doctor. They are not your therapist. They are not the solution to your bipolar disorder. They're your friend. And what friends do is show up. What friends do is listen. What friends do is sit with you in the mess without trying to clean it up on your behalf. They hold space. They get, that phase gets thrown around a lot, that phrase. I'm sorry. And I know it sounds like therapy speak, but it means something. Holding space means being present with someone in their pain without trying to rush them through it or minimize it or fix it. It means saying, this is hard and I'm not going anywhere. The real ones call you on your stuff. They do it with love. And this is the one that separates the good friends from the great friends. A great friend will look you in the eye and say, hey, I think you might be escalating. Have you checked in with your therapist? A great friend will say, I love you, but the way you acted last week wasn't okay and we need to talk about it. A great friend will tell you the truth when the truth is uncomfortable because they'd rather have a hard conversation than watch you spiral. That's love. That's real love. That's not judgment. That's accountability wrapped in compassion. The real ones stay. Period. Full stop. They stay during the mania when you're making decisions that don't make sense. They stay during the depression when you can't get off the couch for 3 weeks. They stay when it's ugly and messy and exhausting and thankless. They stay not because it's easy, but because they decided you were worth the fight, and that right there is the most precious thing in the world when you have bipolar disorder. Someone who decided you were worth the fight. But we need to talk about the painful part, the part nobody wants to talk about, but everybody needs to hear. Sometimes you have to create distance from people who are harmful to your mental health. And sometimes those people are people who love you. Or people you love. And sometimes those people, they've been in your life for years, decades even. Sometimes they're family. And walking away from them, or at least stepping back, it feels like a heel turn. It feels like you're the villain. It feels like you're abandoning people or being selfish or being difficult. But here's what I need you to understand about that, okay? Sometimes the heel turn isn't about becoming the villain. Sometimes it's about walking away from people who were villains disguised as friends. Sometimes the heel turn is the bravest thing you can do because it means choosing your own health over someone's comfort. If someone in your life consistently dismisses your condition, if they call it fake, if they say you're being dramatic, if they roll their eyes when you mention medication, if they tell you to just snap out of it, that person is not in your corner. They're working for the other side. And keeping them close doesn't make you loyal, it makes you vulnerable. If someone in your life uses your condition against you, if they weaponize your diagnosis, if they say you're just being bipolar every time you express an emotion, if they throw your worst moment in your face during your arguments, that person is not your partner. They're your opponent. And you need to get out of that match before the damage becomes permanent. And I know, this is easier said than done, especially when the person is someone you love. But I promise you, the distance you create from toxic relationships will be filled by healthier ones. Maybe not immediately, maybe not the way you expect, but it will happen. Because when you clear out the people who drain you, you make room for the people who sustain you. I want to say one more thing about this, and then we're going to move on. It's okay to mourn the people who left. It's okay to grieve relationships that didn't survive your diagnosis. The grief is legitimate. It's real. It's not weakness, it's love. You love those people. You wanted them in your corner, and they couldn't handle the match. That hurts. It's supposed to hurt. Let it hurt. But don't let it define you. Don't let the people who left convince you that you're unleavable only because something is wrong with you. People leave for 1,000 reasons, and most of the reasons have nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their capacity. Their leaving is on them. Your value is on you. You learn who's really got your back when the match goes wrong. Not during the rehearsal, not during the easy spots. When something goes sideways, you're legit hurt. When a bump goes bad, when the match goes off script, that's when you find out who's real. Who stops the match to check on you? Who protects you in the ring? Who makes sure you get back to safety? And who keeps working the spot like nothing happened because the show is more important to them than you are? That's how you know. That's how you always know. The people who stay when the match goes wrong, those are your people. Protect them, treasure them. And for the love of everything holy, let them in. Now, let's switch gears for a moment. And let's talk about romantic relationships and bipolar disorder for a moment. And I'm going to let y'all in on some stuff that I've never said on a mic before. But first, let me frame this up with the metaphor, because the metaphor is perfect for this one. Being in a romantic relationship when you have bipolar disorder is like asking someone to be your tag team partner in a match where the stipulations keep changing. And they don't get a say in the stipulations. They don't get to read the contract ahead of time. They just walk to the ring with you and find out what kind of match it is when the bell rings. Some days it's just a regular one-on-one match, normal rules, a fair fight. You and your partner work the match together like a well-oiled machine. You communicate, you tag in and out, the crowd's into it. It's a good match. And on those days, your relationship feels normal. It feels manageable. It feels like maybe this bipolar thing isn't a big deal after all. Some days, though, it's a cage match. The walls go up. You can't escape. The anxiety is there. The mood shifts are there. The irritability is there. And your partner is locked in there with you. No tagging out, no leaving, just you, your partner, and whatever your brain decided to throw at you today. And on those days, your relationship feels like a war zone. Not because of anything either you did wrong, but because the stipulation changed and nobody asked permission. And some days, Lord help us, some days, it's a flaming tables match. Everything is on fire. The mania is raging, or the depression is crushing, or the mixed episode is turning your brain into a blender, and your partner is standing in the middle of all that chaos trying to figure out what to do, what to say, where to stand, how to help, how not to make it worse. And they agree to all of it. Every stipulation, every type of match, because they love you. Do you understand how extraordinary that is? Do you understand what it means for another human being to look at all of that, the chaos, the unpredictability, the fear, the risk, and say, I'm in. Tag me in. I'll stand in that corner with you. That's not just love, family. That's an act of courage. That's someone betting their own peace of mind, their own emotional safety, their own life on the belief that you are worth it. And I need to talk about both sides of this, because there are two people in this, and they're both fighting, and they're both hurting, and they both deserve to be heard. Let me start with what it's like to love somebody with bipolar disorder. And I know this part because my wife, she's told me. Not in a mean way, not in a resentful way, but in an honest conversation that took years for us to be able to have. Conversations that required trust that was built brick by brick, rupture by repair over time. Loving someone with bipolar is living in a state of gentle uncertainty. You wake up every morning and you do a quiet assessment. How are they today? What version am I getting? Not because you love them any less on the hard days, but because you need to calibrate. You need to know what kind of match you're walking into so you can be the partner they need. Loving someone with bipolar is learning a language you never planned on speaking. You learn the signs, the subtle shifts, the way their voice changes when mania is coming, a little faster, a little louder, a little more certain about everything. The way they go quiet when depression is approaching, not a peaceful quiet, not a retreating quiet, a withdrawing quiet. You learn to read those signals like a catcher reads a pitcher's tails, and you just adjust accordingly. And nobody taught you this language. You had to learn it in real time, in the middle of the game while the stakes were your heart. Now, loving someone with bipolar disorder is being afraid and not showing it. This one kills me. My wife has told me about nights where she lay awake next to me listening to make sure I was still breathing. Not because she thought I was sick, because she knew I was depressed and she didn't know how deep it went. And she was terrified, but she couldn't let me see the terror because she was afraid her fear would make my fear worse. So she held it in, and she carried it alone. She was my partner's partner. The one who tags in for the tag team partner when nobody's looking. Loving someone with bipolar disorder is forgiving things that are hard to forgive because manic episodes produce behavior. Reckless spending, impulsive decisions, sharp words, grand plans that evaporate, and your partner has to figure it out, sometimes in real time. Is this the person I love, or is this the disease? And that distinction matters, but it's hard to make when you're in the middle of it. When someone you love says something hurtful, your heart doesn't stop and think, oh, that's the mania talking. Your heart just hurts. The pain comes first. The analyst comes later. Let me flip it. Let me talk about what it's like to be that person with bipolar in a relationship, because this is my side of the ring, and I know it well. It's guilt, relentless, ever-present, suffocating guilt. You feel guilty for the episodes. You feel guilty for the burden. You feel guilty for the fights that happened because your brain was misfiring and you couldn't control the shrapnel. You feel guilty for the good times because even in the good times, there's a voice in the back of your head saying, enjoy it while it lasts because you're going to ruin it. You feel guilty for needing more patience, more understanding, more grace than a normal partner would need. And that guilt becomes its own weight, its own trigger, its own cycle. You feel bad for feeling bad, which makes you feel worse, which makes you feel guiltier. It's a feedback loop straight from the underworld. It's the fear of being too much. And this one keeps me up at night even now, even when, with years of therapy, even with a relationship that is strong and loving and built on a foundation of mutual respect, there's a part of me that is always afraid that I am too much, too intense, too unpredictable, too exhausting, too complicated, too broken. And that fear makes you do stupid things. It makes you hide your symptoms. It makes you pretend you're fine when you're not. It makes you push people away because you'd rather leave them than be left. It makes you sabotage good things because you don't believe you deserve them. The fear of being too much makes you shrink yourself down to almost nothing, and then you wonder why you feel invincible. Not invincible, invisible. It's the terror of losing them. Every episode, every mood swing, every hard week, there's a voice that says, this is the one, this is the episode that breaks them. This is where they finally say, I can't do this anymore. And you watch their face for cracks. You listen to their tone for resentment. You interrupt every sigh, every silence, every frustrated look as evidence that they're building an exit strategy. And most of the time, they're not. Most of the time, they're just tired because loving someone with bipolar is tiring. And that's not a criticism. It's a fact. But your brain turns their tiredness into an abandonment. Your brain takes a sigh and turns it to a goodbye. And then there's the gratitude. The gratitude when they stay. The gratitude when they hold your hand during a depressive episode and say, I'm not going anywhere. The gratitude when they set a boundary, because boundaries mean they're planning to stick around long enough for the boundary to matter. The gratitude when they celebrate your stable days without making a big deal out of it, because they understand that stability isn't something you take for granted when stability isn't guaranteed. But my wife, God, let me tell y'all about this woman. She is the greatest tag team partner I could ever ask for. And she didn't sign up for this match knowing what the stipulations were. When we got together, I didn't have a diagnosis yet. She fell in love with a version of me that didn't know it had bipolar disorder. And when the diagnosis came, she had every right to walk away. She had every justification. She could have said, this isn't what I agreed to, and nobody on this planet would have blamed her. But she stayed. She stayed when the mania turned me into someone she didn't recognize. She stayed when the depression turned me into someone who wouldn't wouldn't get up and go and do things. She stayed when I lashed out, when I shut down, and when I made decisions that affected both of us without thinking about both of us. She stayed through medication, taking and not taking when needed to be. It wasn't easy for her. I want to be clear about that. She didn't stay because it was easy. She stayed because she decided that our love was worth fighting for, and then she fought. Not against me, not against the bipolar. She fought for us, for the us that exists between the episodes, for the us that shows up on the stable days when we're laughing on the couch or cooking together or sitting out on the porch watching the sun go down. Not saying anything, just being together. She fought for that version of us, and she refused to let the disease steal it. That's a champion. That's a Hall of Famer. And I really don't tell her that enough. I know I don't. But I'm telling the world right now. But let me talk about some practical stuff, because the feelings are important, but so are the strategies. And this is a motivational podcast, not a romance novel. So let me get to the real talk about how to make a romantic relationship work when bipolar is the third person in the relationship. Number one is communication. Your partner is not a mind reader, and they shouldn't have to be. I know that when you're in an episode, the last thing you want to do is explain what's happening inside your head. You don't have the words, you don't have the energy, you barely have the awareness, but you've got to give them the playbook before the game starts, not during the crisis, before. Sit down with your partner during a stable period, when you're baseline, when you're clear-headed, when you're yourself, and give them the scouting report. Tell them what manic you looks like. When I start talking faster, sleeping less, and making big plans at 2 a.m, that's a flag. Tell them what depressed you needs. When I go quiet and stop wanting to leave the house, don't take it personally. Just be near me. Don't try to fix it. Just be near me. Give them the game plan so they're not out there guessing. So they're not calling audibles in a language they don't speak. Number 2 is boundaries. And this one is for both of you. Love doesn't mean letting someone absorb all of your chaos without protection. Love means protecting your partner from your worst moments while letting them stand with you through them. There's a difference, a big one. Boundaries for the person with bipolar might look like when you're in a manic episode, you're going to hand them the credit cards, not because you're a child, but because you know manic you makes financial decisions that hurt both of you. This is you protecting us. Or when you're escalating, you need them to tell you. You might not like it in the moment, but you need them to be honest because you can't always see it yourself. Boundaries for the partner might look like they need one night a week that's just them. Not because they don't love you, but because they need to recharge so they can be the partner you need. Or if you say something cruel during episode, they will not engage, they will not fight back, but they will not pretend it didn't happen. They'll address it when you're stable. Those are healthy boundaries. Those are not walls. They're guardrails. They keep the relationship on the road. Number 3, this is the one that breaks the most relationships, so listen closely. Your partner is not your therapist. They are not your doctor. They are not your savior. They are your partner. I know it's tempting. I know that when you have someone who loves you, someone who's present, someone who listens, it's tempting to make them your everything. Your therapist, your crisis hotline, your emotional dumping ground, your medication reminder, your accountability partner, your support group, your entire mental health infrastructure. It's tempting because they're right there. They're available. They love you. Why wouldn't you lean on them for everything? Because you'll break them. That's why. If you make your partner solely responsible for managing your bipolar disorder, you will exhaust them, you will drain them, you will burn them out, and eventually you will lose them. Not because they don't love you, but because love is not enough to sustain a one-person treatment team. That's not a threat. That's physics. You can't pour from an empty cup, and if your partner is the only cup you're drinking from, the cup will run dry. Your partner is one member of a team, an important member, a crucial member, but one member. They exist alongside your therapist, your psychiatrist, your support group, your coping strategies, your medication regimen, your self-care practices. They're the tag team partner, not the entire roster. Now, I want to talk directly to the partners for a moment. If you're listening to this and your partner has bipolar disorder, if you're the one in the corner, the one on the apron, the one reaching over the ropes, I want to talk to you for a minute. First of all, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this. The fact that you're here trying to understand, trying to learn, trying to be better for the person you love, that tells me everything I need to know about you. You're a real one. And your partner is lucky to have you, even if they don't always show it, even if the disease makes it hard for them to express it. Second, take care of yourself. And I mean it. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and loving someone with bipolar will test every ounce of your emotional reserve you have. See your own therapist. Lean on your own friends. Have your own support system. You are allowed to struggle with this. You are allowed to be frustrated. You are allowed to be scared. You are allowed to have days where you think, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Those feelings don't make you a bad partner. They make you human. The key is having somewhere to take those feelings that isn't the person you're trying to support. Third, educate yourself. Learn about bipolar disorder, not just the basics, the nuances. Learn about the different types. Learn about the medication. Learn about the triggers. Learn about what a mixed episode looks like versus a manic episode versus a depressive episode. The more you know, the less scary it becomes. And the less scared you are, the more effective you are as a partner. And fourth, set your own boundaries. You are not a martyr. You do not have to absorb everything. It is okay to say, I love you and I need a break right now. It is okay to say, I can't be your only support system. It's okay to say, I need to protect my own mental health so I can be there for yours. Those are not acts of betrayal. Those are acts of sustainability. A tag team partner who burns out in the first 5 minutes of the match can't be there for the finish. The best tag teams in history aren't two individuals doing their own thing while wearing matching gear. They're synchronized. They communicate. They have signals, a look, a tap, a word that tells the other person exactly what's needed in that moment. They trust each other with their lives. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. They cover for each other's blind spots. And most importantly, they respect each other as equals. Not as caretaker and patient, not as strong one and weak one, as partners. Equal partners in a fight that's bigger than either of them alone. That's what a romantic relationship can be when both people are committed. Both people are communicating, and both people understand that bipolar disorder is the opponent, not each other. The opponent is always the disease, not you, not them, the disease. Don't forget that, especially when the match gets ugly, especially when words get said that shouldn't be said and things get done that shouldn't be done. Come back to that. The opponent is the disease. We're on the same side, we're on the same team, and together we can beat it, not cure it. You don't cure bipolar, but you can beat it match by match, day by day, tag by tag. Now, let's talk about your locker room. Your friendships are your locker room, okay? And the quality of that locker room can make or break your career. Well, or our case, your mental health journey. Now, we've already talked about the friends who leave. We covered that earlier. so I'm not going to rehash it. What I want to talk about now is the friends who stay, and more importantly, how to build new friendships when bipolar disorder has burned some of the old ones. Let's start with honesty, because here's the question that keeps a lot of people with bipolar up at night. How much do I tell people? And the answer is, it just depends on the person. You don't have to give everyone the full documentary. Some people get the highlight reel. Yeah, I deal with some mental health stuff. It's managed. I'm good. That's enough for acquaintances, work friends, people you see at the gym. They don't need the director's cut. They don't need the behind the scenes footage. They get the edited PG version, and that is fine. But your inner circle, your real locker room, they need the uncut footage. They need to know what bipolar disorder is. They need to know what your episodes look like. They need to know what you need from them when things get hard. Not because they're your caretakers, we've established that, but because friendship requires a baseline level of honesty to function. And if you're hiding a major part of your life from your closest friends, you're not really letting them be close. You're managing a performance, and performances are exhausting. I'll tell you when I knew my closest friend was my closest friend. It wasn't we were having fun. It wasn't at a barbecue or a game or a night out. It was the day I sat across from him and said, hey, I need to tell you something. I have bipolar disorder, and it's not just a mood thing. It's a real thing. It affects my life. It affects how I think, how I feel, how I act. And I need you to know because I'm tired of pretending around the people I care about. And you know what he said? He just said, okay, what do you need me to do? Not what's wrong with you, not are you sure, not that doesn't sound right, you seem fine to me, just what do you need me to do? That's a locker room guy. That's somebody who belongs in your corner. Now here's the thing about friendships and bipolar, and I wish somebody had told me this earlier because it would have saved me a lot of pain, quality over quantity, always, every time, without exception. You don't need 50 friends. You don't need a packed contact list. You don't need to be popular. You need 3 people, maybe 4, maybe 2. But you need people who answer the phone at 2 a.m. and not ask why until later. People who show up at your front door with food when you've been dark for a week. People who will say, I haven't heard from you in 3 days and I'm coming over, and actually come over. Not people who text thinking of you and then go back to their lives. People who follow through. People whose words and actions match. And those friendships, they're built slow. They're not microwave friendships. They're slow cooker friendships. They take time. They take consistency. They take vulnerability from both of you. They take moments of rupture and repair, because real friendships include conflict, and the friendships that survive conflict are the ones worth keeping. I also want to talk about community. And by community, I mean finding your people, not just as individuals, but as a group. Support groups, online communities, organizations, people who get it because they live it. There is something healing about sitting in a room, virtual or physical, with people who understand, who don't need you to explain why you couldn't get out of bed for a week, who don't need you to justify why you spent $1,000 on something you'll never use, who nod when you describe the sensation of your brain running at 200 miles an hour while you're standing still. That shared understanding is medicine, not a replacement for the actual medicine. I want to be clear about that. Talk to your doctor, take your meds. But it's the kind of healing that you can't get from someone who's never been in the ring. The locker room isn't about everybody liking you. It never was. In sports, the locker room is about mutual respect. It's about knowing that the people around you, even the ones you don't hang out with, even the ones you wouldn't grab dinner with, they're on your side. They'll catch you when something goes wrong out on the field. They'll have your back when it matters, not because you're best friends, but because that's what the locker room does. Build your locker room, protect it, and never take it for granted. Because the friends who show up when bipolar disorder has you on the floor, those friends are worth more than 100 fair weather acquaintances. Those are your people, and your people are your lifeline. One more thing about building new friendships when bipolar has burned the old ones, because I know some of you are listening to this and thinking, that's great, but I don't have a locker room. I burned every bridge. I pushed everyone away. I'm starting for zero. First of all, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience, and experience is worth more than zero. You now know what you didn't know before. You know what healthy friendship looks like. You know what you need. You know what you can offer, and you know what doesn't work. Start small. One person, one honest conversation, one moment of genuine connection. You're not building a roster overnight. You're signing one free agent at a time, and each one counts. And give people the chance to surprise you. I know. You've been burned. I know trust doesn't come easy. I know vulnerability feels like walking into a cage match with no weapon. But you've got to try, because the alternative is isolation. And we've already established where isolation leads. It leads to 3:17 in the morning on the edge of the bed. Build the locker room. It saves lives. It saved mine. So let's get to winding this down, because as I look at the clock, my time is dwindling down, as I'm finally able to finish up this episode that has taken way too long to put together. I've found, I think, a better structure where I'll be able to get back to putting out more per week, especially since we're getting ready for part 5 of this 5-part series. But I want to give a special shout out before we leave today, whatever it is when you're listening. I just know what it is while I'm finishing up recording. Give a shout out to every partner who has held someone through a depressive episode, who has laid next to someone in the dark and whispered, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, until the words lost meaning and became pure presence. You are a lifeline. To every friend who answered the phone when it rang at a time no phone should ring, who dropped everything and said, talk to me, you are a hero, an actual hero, not the kind with a cape, the kind with a phone and a willingness to lose sleep for someone they love. To every family member who didn't understand but tried anyway, who Googled bipolar disorder at midnight because they were scared for their kid, their sibling, their parent, who showed up at a therapist's office for a family session even though they didn't believe in therapy, who swallowed their pride and said, teach me. You are the front row and the biggest match of someone's life, and your cheering matters more than you know. To every therapist, every psychiatrist, every counselor, every mental health professional who sits across from people like me and help us make sense of the chaos, you are the coaching staff, and we don't win without you, period. And to everyone listening to this who has fought bipolar disorder, who is fighting bipolar disorder every single day, who wakes up and doesn't know what kind of match it's going to be that day, who takes their medication even when they don't want to, who goes to therapy even when it's hard, who reaches out even when it's terrifying, who keeps going even when every cell in their body is screaming to stop. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are not broken. You are a fighter in the middle of the hardest match imaginable, and the fact that you're still here, still listening, still breathing, and still trying means you are winning. Maybe it doesn't feel like it. Maybe the scorecards doesn't show it, but you are winning. Because winning isn't the absence of struggle. Winning is the refusal to quit. Make the tag. Reach out your hand, let somebody grab it, and together, you're going to put on the match of a lifetime. This has been the Inner Heel Turn, part 4 of the Bipolar Disorder series. Thank you for trusting me with your time and your ears and your heart. I don't take that lightly. I never have, and I never will. If just this one episode helped you, share it. Send it to your partner. Send it to your friend. Send it to your mama. Send it to that person who's trying to understand but doesn't know. Let this be a bridge. And if you're struggling right now in this moment, as you're listening to my voice, reach out. Not tomorrow, now. Text somebody, call somebody, go to a crisis line, walk next door, do something that connects you to another human being, because you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard, and you deserve to have somebody in your corner. Part 5 is coming. It's coming really soon. There's not going to be as long as a gap as it was between part 3 and part 4. I promise. And that's going to be, we're going to call that the championship match, the finale. We're going to bring this whole series home. But until then, take your meds, see your therapist, hug your people, and remember, you are not the heel in your own story. Bipolar disorder is. You're the champion who just hasn't lifted the title yet. But you will. We will. Together. Inner Heel Turn out.